Hey folks, it's Abby and today we are going to be going through my 2022 reading stats. Yes, I have my glasses on today, unfortunately I do need to see. We're going to go through all the different statistics around what I read last year. I also did this in 2021 if you'd like to check that video out and compare and contrast to see how well I did. But let's dive straight in. The number of books I read this year, 122. How in hell? I had months where I was barely reading anything. I don't know how I managed that, but I'm happy. In terms of those books, 107 of them were physical books, with 15 of them being audiobooks and 3 of them being ebooks. So I was very much focusing on the actual tangible books in my home. At least I got through some of them. The number of books that I actually read off of my physical TBR from the start of the year, which you can see in this video here, is 57, which isn't the highest. And there were actually 41 books that I read that came in brand new. So I need to stop reading my new books. Or at least get to my backlist. And then the number of physical books on my TBR at the end of the year, thanks to my birthday and Christmas, 175. Slightly ridiculous, slightly ridiculous. For the pages in total, I read 43,454 pages in 2022, as well as 100.51 hours of audiobook listening, which is more than I've done before. My average page count for the year was the 300 to 350 page bracket, and the actual breakdown when I added it all up is 347.6 pages on average in each of my books. So it worked out the same, which it doesn't always, but I was pretty happy with that. That turned out alright. 5-star reads. I had 24 5-star reads. 5-star reads video there for you if you'd like to see all of those. And the most common amount of ratings I actually gave was 4 stars. 62 books fell in the 4-star category, with, when you break that down to half stars, 32 of those were 4 stars and 31 of those were 4.5 stars. So I had a good reading year. My average rating on CAWPILE was 7.43, which rounds up to a 4-star. For the monthly breakdown of my ratings, I actually had a look at the numbers on CAWPILE. My best month for reading was in December. It was my 3rd lowest book month with only 6 books, but my highest rating with 8.33, whereas my lowest rating was 6.06 in June. So those were both 2 of my smallest reading months. June I read 5 books and December I read 6. I have no idea what's going on there. I read from 11 different genres in 2022, and the main 4 of them were classics, non-fictions, sci-fi and fantasy. Surprising no one, fantasy is out on top with 57 books, sci-fi is in with 13, which is I think higher than last year, but it's still lower than I'd like it to be. I do need to get to more sci-fi books hopefully in the future. I'm starting to really love that genre. Then I read 16 non-fiction books, which I'm really happy with. I love making sure to include non-fiction every single year. I read some fantastic non-fiction books. And then I read 15 classics, which is another thing that I was really focusing on, especially at the beginning of the year and in 2021, was reading a lot more classics, and I definitely have now. I've read a lot of the kind of core classics. I'm very happy with that. I have a much more solid background on the classics. I didn't do English literature at university, okay? So I'm now kind of caught up a bit more. I read 40 YA books this year. I read 78 adult books. So obviously the discrepancies there are the ones that are children's, middle grades, but yes, primarily adult books. I'm becoming an adult. I am 26. Both things are regrettable. For translated fiction, out of 122 books, 22 of them were translated. So I think that's a fair amount. I'd love it to be more, but I do have so many non-translated books on my TBR shelves that I'm happy with the amount that I managed. My most common language was Japanese, with 5 books translated from Japanese, and I know that 4 of those, because Chris got me 4 translated Japanese cat books, and one of them was my own. Then the next most common language was French, with 3 translated books from French. I know that The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo were French. I can't think off the top of my head what the other French book was. I assume it was probably a classic. And then I had 2 books that were translated from Swedish. In terms of series and standalones, I read mainly standalones. I seem to be gravitating towards them, which is unexpected because I love me a good series. But I read 69 nice standalone books and 56 books from series, so it's not too big of a discrepancy, but it is leaning towards standalones, which I always find very interesting. And then percentage wise for representation in the books, 43.2% of the books that I read had LGBTQ+ representation in them. That is not quite half, I'm getting there, but that is massively up on what it was last year. Like, significant improvement from last year, so very happy with that. And then the disability rep in my books is at 34.4%. Again, not as high as it should be, but again, another pretty decent improvement on last year. So another one that I'm very happy with, that is on the up. That's all about the books. Now the authors. So just a reminder that I read 122 books this year, and I read from 109 different authors. So a few of those were repeats. My most common was Derek Landy, with primarily the Skullduggery Pleasant series, as well as the first book in the Demon Road series. I read 6 books from him in 2022. And then our very own Hannah from Letter M, Hannah O'Donnell, she has 3 books published and I have read all of them, so she was my next highest. Anything more than that was authors that I just read 2 books from. Also, authors that were new to me, 83 authors this year were new to me. That is 66.4% of the authors that I was reading were brand new to me, which again, not expected. I have noticed now that I'm not reading backlists from authors that I love as much as I would have expected myself to. It's something that I really want to make more of a conscious effort to do once my TBR is ever so slightly less insane. In terms of the gender representation, the most common gender represented in my read books is women, or people who currently identify as women or who don't specify their gender and present as female. That is 72 of the authors that I read from this year were women out of all 109 of them, and that is 57.6% of my reading. The rest of that was primarily made up of authors that identify as male or present as male with no specific identifiers. The rest was then mixed. So when a book was written by a male and female author, or a combination of various genders, or non-binary authors, which have their own category. Then for the race of the authors, I read 38 books by people of colour this year, which is 30.4%. So almost a third. Nowhere near enough. Nowhere near enough. I also can't remember my stat for last year as to whether it's an improvement or not. Almost a third of my books are from authors of colour. It can only go up from here. It's not too far from a third to a half. I can do that, right? I can do that. I've mentioned it in my bullet journal video. I am still going to be trying to read 2 this year authors of colour each month. Last year it was 1 author of colour each month. Managed that perfectly fine, so it is 2 now. And then the nationality breakdown. And this is where I hang my head in shame. 41 of my books were by American authors. I think 12 of that is because of Illumicrate. They are primarily American authors for some reason. Goldsboro also has a lot of American authors, not as many, but I would say I didn't have as many books from it either, so I'd say about 5 of them were from American. The rest are just me. Why am I picking American authors? I don't know. The next biggest category was English, specifically English. I break down the individual countries inside of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland because I want to track that as well. I did read from some Scottish authors, I think I read from a Welsh author, didn't read from any Northern Irish, but 33 books from English authors, which I would prefer to have that higher than the American. Hopefully it will be next year. We'll see how it goes. Then the next highest was Irish with 8 books, so obviously 6 of those were Mr. Derek Landy. I'm not sure who the other 2 were, but very pleased, very pleased. And then next highest were both at 5 books each. One was Japanese, and those are the 5 translated Japanese books that I mentioned. And the other one, which was unexpected, is 5 Nigerian authors, which I'm very happy with, because I feel like, especially on my own shelves, but also globally, when we talk about diversity and representation, we go for diversity in the US and then we look a lot at Asia, but we do not look enough at the literature that comes out of Africa. So I'm very happy that I had 5 Nigerian authors. It's not enough, but it's up there. It's up there with Japanese. And those are my stats. That's everything. That's the last thing that will ever be in this bullet journal from 2022. I've got a new one now for 2023. Let me know down below, how many books did you manage to read in this past year? And also let me know if you track kind of how many authors of colour, what different nationality they are, the representation inside the books, or even if you just count the page numbers. I would love to hear kind of what statistics you track and what you find important to you. If you'd like to see more of me around the internet, then my social media links are all down in the description below. And if you'd like to see more of me on YouTube, then hit that red subscribe button. But thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this video, folks, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Bye! bye.